Hey everybody, welcome back to London's Pretty Cool Podcast. We have a fantastic episode coming up for you today. We are sitting down with Vanessa Brown and Jason Dickson of Brown and Dickson Booksellers here in London, Ontario. We could not be more excited to be speaking to them today. They have such an incredible history here in the city and something of a knowledge and basis that is a little bit different than what you've maybe come to expect here on the podcast. So we're really looking forward to getting the knowledge that they have about the city, about the history, as well as learning about the novels that they've written themselves. Jason Dickson writing Michael Binder's Raw, Vanessa Brown writing The Forest City Killer, and working together to make 150 Cultural Moments, the book about Canada, as well as what it means to be an antiquarian bookshop. We are very excited for you guys to hear about all that they have to explain and talk about. Please be sure to like and subscribe, listen, and share to whoever you like to. And, let's get to the episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the London's Pretty Cool Podcast. We are here with two special guests, Vanessa Brown and Jason Dickson of Brown and Dickson. Hi, everybody. How's it going?
Great.
We are great.
That's
Doing
good.
great. Heck yes, absolutely.
I'm your host, Erin Briggs, along with my fellow host and brother.
Patrick Briggs, that's me. You all know. All right, fellow co-host, brother to the sister.
Vanessa and Jason, could you tell us a little bit about starting Brown and Dickson, kind of how it came to be? I know it came through a few different alterations with starting an apartment and moving to Novax, and now your current location. So is there a little rundown you could give the audience?
Why don't you start?
Sure. Well, being a bookseller is more of a vocation than it is just a regular job. So once you start bookselling, you sort of just keep doing it. So we've both been selling books for many, many years. I'm at almost 20 years. You're what? Like
Almost 25.
Are you sure it's not actually 25 now?
Might be.
Yeah.
Hopefully a full
Happy
youth.
anniversary.
Thank you very much. Thank you. This is how I celebrate, by doing a podcast.
There you go.
Wah, wah, wah. Will you cut that out?
Well, we were in the situation where it became necessary to continue working, and we're both booksellers, so we had to change how we sold books to accommodate our new living situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so it's like being a teacher and you move to a new city, so you apply for a job teaching in your new city, except as a bookseller, you don't necessarily have to apply for a job. You just have to get a buttload of books and start selling them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where do I find the nearest inventory and then just start filling it up, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, we started in a second floor office on Dundas Street.
Yep.
And that was very short-lived. The relationship there sort of broke down. So we ended up actually moving our entire home and getting a 3-bedroom apartment so we could devote the 3rd bedroom to the business.
Yeah. Yeah,
Did you
we started selling from our apartment there. And how long did we do that? For about
It was
year?
about a year, and it was a real hustle.
Yeah, definitely a real hustle. And then we did not a block party, but we did
book party.
a book party, downtown, right by the old Bud Gowan building. And, we invited TRHW, and Fuse was there, and Grickle Grass was there, and just had this sort of like alleyway party where we, brought every book that we had.
Yeah.
Filled the alley with it. And that was a big success. And sort of we started thinking about opening up a store.
Yeah, and at the same time, that's when Titus Ferguson approached us with Adam Kaplan from 121 Studios, and they said, "Hey, we're moving to Novax, and we'd like to have you as an anchor store." So we moved in there, and we weren't quite sure about that move, but over that summer, like during that year of book selling from home, we'd done mail order, we'd done catalogs, we'd built a lot of relationships with institutions and high-end collectors. But what we discovered, especially when we were at Home County Folk Festival that summer, which was was that 2015?
I don't
2014?
know. 2015, I think.
Yeah.
Or was it 2016?
No, wait.
I don't
When
know.
did we get married?
Um,
Oh, we got married in 2014. Yeah, so it was summer of 2015.
Yeah.
Okay. So, sorry, I'm allergic to my cat, so I keep being like my nose.
while this is going on, there's like 2 cats circling
Roaming
us.
around.
And
Like, where they're
snackers.
prey, and Snackers is
Just
there.
right there.
Yeah,
There's 2 sharks waiting for food.
Precisely.
Well, when we set up our booth at Home County, which was also a ton of work because books are very heavy
Yeah.
and small, and they require shelving. They're not like it's not like we're selling feathers or like cotton pillows
Yeah,
or
buttons.
like I would see people like selling things that were not going to get destroyed in the rain
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not super heavy and be so jealous. And we were doing all these markets, like markets,
Yeah.
pop-ups. Like every weekend we were doing like 2 pop-ups, or if we knew there was a cool event going on, even if they didn't have vendors, we were like, do you want vendors? We'll come and be a vendor.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
film screenings and all sorts of stuff. So that's an exhausting way to run your business.
Oh yeah, we basically loaded our entire living room up into the back of your mom's van
Yeah, we borrowed my mom's van.
and drove it to Victoria Park and set our living room up essentially in the middle of Victoria Park for Home County, and then sold books there for 3 days.
We even took our furniture, like our
Our living room furniture. 'Cause-
So people
It
were
was a-
hanging out reading books on the living room furniture out there.
yeah, I mean, it was great. Like, it sort of became this little twilight hangout spot that people would come to sort of just hang out while this big festival was going on
A
around
little
us.
sanctuary.
Yeah,
in the middle of
which
it.
was wonderful. We've sort of continued that.
people loved it
We
too.
loved it, and that was sort of when we really, the response to that was, um, obviously we can open up a store. Obviously, there's enough people to make it possible to, build something like that and have it actually work instead of, fail miserably.
Well, that's good.
We moved into 121 and that was amazing. I mean, the collaborative atmosphere there was incredible. So many creative and interesting people that we knew from other parts of life or met through 121 Studios.
Yeah, it felt like art school. Felt like going back to art school.
Yeah, it really did. And that was that we were there for about a year, and that was really magical, really, really magical.
Mm-hmm.
But we found that for us creatively, it was super positive. Like that's when I started writing The Forest City Killer. That's when we wrote the 150 book. Like we did so much while we were there.
Big Kangaroo Variety while we were
Oh
there.
my God, Kangaroo Variety was
That
incredible.
was great.
And that like would not have happened if it wasn't for the community at 121 Studios. Like that was a group project.
Yeah.
So, but the problem was from like a paying your bills standpoint, Londoners seem to be really confused about like shared working space, especially when it came to retail.
Mm.
You know, like if someone had been like New Toronto or Brooklyn, they would come in and be like, "Oh, cool! Oh, there's a space like this in Austin, Texas that I love," and they would,
Mhm.
But then other people would say, "Is this a bookstore?
Yeah.
What's back there? What's
What is this?
happening?"
We don't understand what this is.
These multi-use spaces kind of thing. It didn't make a lot of sense to people, you found, when they were coming in there?
Well, no, a good chunk of the used book market is, over 40 years old and
over 60.
over 60, and that a decent part of the used bookseller's living will be made selling books to those folks. And if the space didn't make much sense to them, they didn't know how to feel comfortable there. Where do I go? Who are these people? Who's that guy with the bike? What's that sound coming from the back? There's a band practicing here. Like I shouldn't be here. Basically, that was I shouldn't be here.
Like, why is that guy drinking a beer at 2 in the afternoon on a
yeah.
vintage couch? I don't understand what's happening.
I'm just trying to buy some books. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we were like, this is the most amazing
loved
time
it.
of our life.
We
I
loved
feel
it.
young again.
Yeah. But then that space, we didn't even really expect to move. Again, these thoughts start in the back of your head, and we talk about them, maybe talk about them to death. But we were walking down Richmond Street just close to where we lived, and saw this absolutely small but perfect space beside where Dos Tacos is now, and
Yeah, it's Folklore Candle Company
yeah,
now.
Folklore, which and they're great. She's made it all like spooky and cryptic, but yeah, within 2 weeks we had decided to move and just again made this ridiculous jump into retail, full retail.
Yeah, we tend to do it that way.
It was a really cool spot to pick, right? Did you find timing was really lucky with the position and like the spot that you found?
I guess so. Like, yeah, I suppose.
Yeah,
It's
because it was probably the only space on Richmond Road that we could have afforded. Like it was
800 square feet.
if
That was what we could afford.
it was like 500 square feet.
500, yeah.
It was
had
like
a basement. That was cool.
It
like a
did.
creepy like Silence of the Lambs basement that we really enjoyed.
Tell them about what it was like when we first moved in.
So when we first moved in, it had like the detritus from 30 years of failed retail operations in the basement, like every possible kind of shelf, and like 3 left of every sort of inventory, and a gigantic humidor that was in the back, which we tore out.
No, he's not okay. The humidor was like, sorry, that was our cat.
Cat's just destroying our office.
Knocking everything over. They're like, you're not paying attention to us, so we're gonna. So Jason's describing a humidor. Let me describe this a little better for you. This was a human-sized, homemade walk-in refrigerator.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looked terrifying.
Yeah, I was gonna say that looks scary.
Like it was made with these sort of prefab insulation boards and then covered, and like every corner was siliconed. Like this guy must have, I assume a dude, because it was for the cigar store, and I assume, but it really looked like you would kidnap someone. Like you could kidnap someone and store them in there. Our kids wanted to make it into a playhouse, and we were like, ugh.
Yeah, it just seems morally wrong.
Yeah.
But we tore it out. Like when we tore it out, there was like all this wood paneling down there, and we were like, oh my God, this is like
my childhood.
Our rec rooms, like our childhood rec rooms from like 1982. And we're like, we're going to use this space and turn it into like a hangout zone, which is what we did basically. But like the whole store was probably 10 feet wide and maybe 20 feet deep.
Yeah, you could lie and lift your arms and your feet would touch. Like,
wow.
Yeah. I don't know if it was like, if we were, I think we were fortunate, but it's a grind no matter where you go or what you do. There's no magic. There's no magic spot. It's a grind. It's work, So, but we made it work. We were there for about 2 years.
Yeah, about 2 years.
Yeah, we made a living.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and another reason we were really fortunate is because, and this is probably something your listeners might be interested in. We've listened. We get the theme, is that we had what, you're just making fun of me, I'm such a nerd.
No, I'm not making fun of you.
It was a local landlord who ran a business in downtown London, specifically retail, so she knew what you could actually charge for rent, unlike some other landlords we won't mention who are charging like
ridiculous
metropolitan Toronto prices for spaces on Richmond Row, which basically precludes a lot of mom and pops having stores there.
Absolutely.
And moving to our new space next to Prince Al's, we have that good fortune again to have another local entrepreneur, locally owned business building. So, we've been really fortunate that way.
Yeah, we found that they know the ins and outs of, running a retail operation on Richmond Street. They've done it, our current landlord has done it for decades, or did do it for decades. And so, they know what a slow Sunday feels like. They know, what the first of the month feels like and all that stuff. So that's deeply helpful. They're not, sitting in Toronto, your property's not, a line on a spreadsheet of portfolio of properties. They actually are there, which makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
fascinating stuff, retail and real estate and downtown
Exactly.
London.
I love
Well,
the new spot too, by the way. I just
yes.
wanted to throw that in there.
So do we. Yeah. Well, yeah, you were yeah, I remember chatting with you at the shop during one of Jill's shows. But
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, it was great. Yeah, it's a great space. We absolutely love it. There were 2 spaces on Richmond. We said if either of them opened up, we would just jump at it and not think about it.
And this is one of them.
This was it. It became available, and so we just took it, and we're just like, we'll make it work one way or another.
But that's all through community. Like through getting to know other entrepreneurs and other small business owners, and also like in the arts community. And in fact, we met Robin when she was doing Botanista at the pop-up markets with us.
Robin from Grown Bloom.
Yeah, so we develop relationships with people, and that leads you towards these opportunities. So Robin got a hold of us and said, hey, the tattoo parlor's moving. You guys we know you've always wanted this space. First pick, and we're like, done. Like we signed the lease without even looking at the space.
Yep.
You're just ready.
That's amazing. You were
Dream
ready.
spot, going for it.
Yeah.
Like we
Richmond
thought maybe
Row.
it had
That's
a
amazing.
basement or a storage room behind the door.
No.
Nope.
You make it work.
Well, right? Yeah. I mean, like, you do everything you can with what you have. So we certainly squeeze as much from our spaces as possible in our circumstances. So
It is pretty funny opening the back door there, being like, all right, we're gonna get into the storage area here, and it's just like, nope, that is the street
That's
there.
outside.
That's the other side.
yeah.
I just wanted to ask, they always say to never go into business with like a family member or loved one. And so how is running a business with your partner?
We worked together for 10 years at a shop as friends, secretly crushing on each other madly. So Brown and I had sort of tempered a very good work relationship, where like I knew what it was like when she was hungover, and she knew what it was like before I had my morning coffee. And we platonically did that for almost a decade. So that really, really makes a huge difference when you have those years behind you.
Yeah, like we really fell in love working together. So that's a big part of our romance, is having a bookstore and working in a bookstore. It's all foreplay, guys. No, but like we don't have like a division between home and work, because as I mentioned at the beginning, like it's a vocation. You're always doing it. We talk to other book dealers, we accidentally call someone in BC and it's like 7 a.m. their time, and they're like, what? Okay, I'll put it in Canada Post tomorrow. Okay, and like go back to bed. You're never not being a bookseller.
Yeah.
So that's part of it too. But I understand. Like I think if you are in a romantic relationship and then you decide to go into business together, that could be a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
But because we already had like a pre-established work rapport, we can just slip into that really easily, and it's not a conflict. So like Jason will be like, get off your lazy ass.
I don't say that.
And I'll be like, stop being a grumpy little monster.
You do say that to me though, because I'm nasty before my morning coffee.
I love it though. It's your Mr. Darcy detachment that's so sexy.
My Byronic angst.
Yeah.
But I mean, we had the fortune of like like having those years together, and then being able to like finally explore being in love and being married, and that came second, even though the crush was fierce for a very long time. But so that has been a delightful fucking delightful.
But
Sorry.
that was more of the adventure because you
reduce
have
my entire marriage to like a little platitude.
That was
you-
delightful.
you find out though, like
Sorry.
there's this whole other side of the person you know so well for working together. Like
Yeah.
we confided in each other about our relationships with other people. Like when we finally hooked up, I knew about his entire sexual history and all of his ex-girlfriends. I knew.
Yeah.
I already knew his family. I already knew what his poo smelled like.
Yeah.
What he was gonna have for lunch. Like everything.
Yeah.
So and then when you go into the domestic sphere, then it's opposite day, where you're like, oh, I assumed you did it this way because of how you are at work. It's totally different. And I imagine
You're
that's
absolutely right.
sort of similar to what people go through when they're romantic. It's the opposite, right? Of what people find at the office. So what do you think?
Yeah, well, that was a great answer. I was very interested in that.
It was a really beautiful answer, actually. And I loved it. I actually had a question about the business itself. You guys are quoted as it's being, correct me if I'm saying this wrong, an antiquarian bookshop.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean for people who don't know? What is that exactly?
The working definition is anything over 100 years old. But any book over 100 years old, that's sort of our background. But more broadly, it's sort of rare and collectible books, sort of unusual and collectible books. So the scarce things, the unique things.
Yeah, and it requires a qualification. Like you can't, I mean, some people pick it up through apprenticing, but it's not like just looking things up on eBay or ABE books and going, ooh, someone else is selling this for $50. It's not advanced yard selling. It's like we've both been to post-secondary education for book selling.
Yeah, but it's not like being a lawyer. It's not like there's an adjudicating council that accepts it gives you a license to sell antiquarian books.
No, we both started apprenticing with another bookseller, and that's the majority of the education is on the job. But the thing is, in order to access the rare materials, generally, and it's not always the case, there are antiquarian booksellers who strictly deal in antiquarian material or rare material, and they don't have a secondhand bookstore. But because we're in London and we're not in New York or Toronto or Montreal, the saturation of rare material is it's like a loose poo. I don't know. It must be because I'm a parent that all my metaphors are poo related today. No, it's like, they have sticky rice and we have like basmati rice. I don't know how it's less dense. There are more little fish than big fish.
There aren't as many rare books in London, Ontario.
Oh, that would be the summary. Yeah. So having the secondhand bookstore lets us indulge in our love of books and have an enormous lending library at our fingertips constantly. But it also, usually it's when you buy like 5 boxes, you find one rare book. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, so it's just like record, or in a way, some not now, but like in the old days, maybe when DJs and stuff were trying to find those exact records to sample or something like that. You've got to really know what you're looking for and know how to look for it. That kind of thing.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. In fact, when we chat with Justin at Odyssey Records, or Mike from Speed City Records, or Troy from Grooves, the language is entirely interchangeable. It's there's a music collector or music dealer blog I read, and it's you could just slip the word books into every time he says records, and it's the exact same thing, exact same set of problems, like a very similar market of like niche obsessed men.
Yeah, and the clerking culture is very similar to High Fidelity. Like that clerking culture, like that Kevin Smith, like that's we've spent a long time talking about it, but I think we both really love that clerking culture, which you can only get in a small indie business, whether it's a privately owned convenience store or used record store or any of the many representations of bizarre ensemble cast shops that you've seen on film and television. It is Empire Records.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very similar that way, and we love that, so we keep at it.
When you are getting these books together, like these over 100-year-old books, or I guess like that is what you focus on, but you do also have some newer stuff as well. How do you decide on what to choose? When we were doing some research, we found you guys like focus on local history, true crime, the occult, comic books. There's counterculture, all kinds of stuff. So how do you focus in on what you're going to choose? Because you do only have such like kind of a smaller space to focus in on. So how do you narrow in on what you wanna sell?
It's a really good question. We talk about that quite a bit. I think the short answer is that we've been in the trade long enough that enough books have come across our desk, or we've shelved enough of them. We've moved stock that hasn't sold from this bookcase to that bookcase to the van to the Goodwill. Like we've moved so many that haven't sold in many different shops. So much of the job is just moving things from here to here to here to here. You sort of, and if enough books cross your desk, you get a sense of what's interesting and what isn't. Where like it might not even be a book that I've seen before, but I just have a sense that this is unique and unusual. I haven't, you don't see too many books like this, and you pick it up, you take a chance on it. But the books that won't sell become very familiar to you as well, and then you just avoid them. You just don't buy them.
Well, it's a bit like it is really like a bit like shopping for your own collection, except you're also shopping for other people's collections. So, I mean, something that's coming to me right now, although we've, as Jason mentioned, talked about it 100 times, like what is a Brown and Dickson book? So, I mean, this is just my way of explaining it for today, but it has to be a book that I would want in my collection or should be in someone else's collection. And who is that person? Like, I imagine who that customer is. And is it someone who's going to come shopping in a downtown bookstore? Is it someone who's smart and interesting and might dig the other stuff we do, like our cultural activities and, the networking and connections that are made at our store where we like introduce artists to each other or writers to each other or musicians to writers. And Jason likes to say like he wants a doctor to meet their tattoo artist in our store, so it's a community hub. So when I look at a book, it needs to either be something I want or someone I'd want to talk to at a cocktail party would have. Like if I went to someone's house and they had that book on their shelf, would I think, oh God, not that. This person, I thought this was a really smart, cool person. And then I went to their house and I looked at their books and I was like, oh, they're a total poser and their books are stupid and they must be stupid. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Totally, yeah.
Like John Waters said, if you go to someone's house and they don't have books, like if you go home with someone and they don't have books, don't fuck them. Like you don't want the possible accidental procreation to happen with a moron like that. That's not.
The line has to be drawn.
Save the gene pool from
that's so funny.
Trumponomics. So yeah. Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I love that.
It's not a snobbery thing. Like we buy lots of trash books.
I love trash.
But it has to be trash for people who like we think wouldn't like people we want to be around. Like I won't buy like Janet Ivanovich books, but I'll buy Louise Penny because she's like an Australian mystery writer and like she's a good writer. And oh no, she's Canadian, isn't she?
Yeah, I think she's Canadian.
Yeah, she's from Montreal.
Who's the Australian one I'm thinking of? Shit. Now I look stupid in front of everybody. I'm supposed to know everything about all the books.
It's impossible
Poser.
about all the books.
Yeah.
So many of them.
But yeah, little things.
Yeah.
That being said about questionably good or bad, art, like if it's appreciated, it's appreciated. You guys have put on bad art festivals, a bad art festival at the Pun Fest, as well as
Yeah.
live music, like different events at your business, like, so it is kind of like what you're saying about creating a community base that is kind of focused around the same thing. Can you tell us about what it's like hosting events there? Why did you decide to open your doors for things like this? What's your favorite part about it? That kind of thing.
It's something that we'd be doing whether we had a shop or not. So we'd be putting this stuff on in our city, whether we had a bookstore or not. So the bookstore just gives us a space to do it in that we have, at least a little bit of control over and security with. So,
Mhm.
But we like coming up with wonderful, stupid ideas and being able to do them like a week later, and just being like, oh my, we should do this, like this dumb thing, and then have the freedom to just do it and try it a week later to see if it works or not. Sorry, Snackers is like fully pushing herself into her legs.
You guys decided to host if you didn't have this shop, you'd be like doing this kind of stuff in your apartment anyways, or like be figuring out a space to do these sorts of things. It just helps basically that you happen to have a space and you're like, yeah, let's just do it right here, and there's a door, people can walk in. It's perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
I think part of it too comes from that approach to book selling, which is that it's not just a job, it's something that we do all the time. So that commingles with our relationships with other people and our friends who tend to be in the arts and culture community. Not that all of our friends are, but and then when you're talking to someone and they're doing something cool and they're looking for spaces, especially when we've lost the WIC, we've lost the embassy, like all the places we would go are not there.
Yeah.
So if you want to see a cool show, or like, where is the poetry reading going to happen? Like that's it. And there are different events around town. Like there's the Arts Project. They do tons of amazing stuff, but like, we just sort of felt like, it's just sitting there,
Yeah.
we close up and go home and then it's just sitting there. So it's not costing us anything to let someone use it.
Yeah.
It seems really selfish to look at people and see them spending money or trying to increase ticket sales to pay for the rent on a space when you have a space. And also knowing we know what it's like to be creators and not be able to share our work because there's a lack of resources or does
Yeah, absolutely. I know it firsthand, like we were saying earlier in the show, when we were speaking. Jill, my partner, we have a project together, Mall Crimes, and we asked you guys to put on a show there, and you were like more than happy to help us out. We had like a couple bands from Toronto come in, and it was one of the funnest shows I've played in the city in like recent years. It was so cool playing in like
show.
Playing in a bookstore, having like in this tight space, and it was all ages too, which is something that you don't always get at venues. So like there was
especially
kids there,
with like the bands that you kind of play, Patrick, with. There is a tough time having an all ages show. It's usually at Call the Office 19 plus.
Yeah.
So having a space that everybody can come in and enjoy the show, just having like kids sit on the ground, it's great to have something like that in the city.
That show was fucking baller. And we were just about to do a follow-up show when COVID hit and we had to cancel it. And I was like, no, I want more loud, hardcore punk things and thrash or whatever.
We all need that more in our lives.
They loved it.
Yeah, they did. They really liked it.
They came in and they were like, thanks for the soundtrack last night. Like they turned down their
They turned down
music
their-
so
yeah,
that
that's not-
all their restaurant was listening to the band. And like the guy who lived upstairs was totally fine.
loved
And
it.
everyone thought it was rad. So
It's fun to be like sitting in the audience when one of these events is going on and see people walk by the big bookstore window and just have like a look of complete confusion on their face.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes disgust or and that pleases me a great deal.
oh my God. You guys know Angie Quick, the artist in town?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so she does performance art. And for a while at the Arts Project, she was dancing in the windows of the Arts Project and just seeing what reactions she would get from people. It's performance art. So we were like, Angie, you should definitely do that in our bookstore window. Like I saw it on
Mhm.
Instagram and I was like, please come do that at my bookstore. So we just gave her a key and we're like, have fun.
Go
So
for it.
she did it a couple times and the first time was nothing really remarkable happened, but the second time she did it, and I mean, it, people were crowding around the store. People were like hooting and hollering. There were creeps. And then someone called the police on her.
Yeah.
Oh
And
my goodness.
apparently, like the closest police unit that was available was the SWAT team.
Oh my gosh.
Full fucking SWAT gear.
So Angie's like dancing in the window and like feeling herself, she's having fun. Like she wasn't dancing, like it's not erotic dancing. She literally puts on a dance leotard and some Bluetooth headphones and like, jams out to Lizzo or something. It's not,
Mm.
she's just look at the reactions people have to a woman's body dancing
Yeah.
and how it gets eroticized and objectified and just real. And, or sometimes women encourage her and they're like, yeah, like she really gets off on seeing, gets off, it's a sexual, she really enjoys seeing people's reactions. So of course, then the SWAT team shows up in like
That's
their
perfect.
fucking bulletproof vests.
Perfect.
And she's like, on the one hand, what? And on the other
Mhm.
hand, hello.
Yeah, exactly. This is exactly what I wanted. This is what performance art can do, and create, which is really cool.
Yeah.
That was certainly a response.
It's
Definitely a response.
It's also liberating to work in a job where like, if we did something insane and got arrested for like, I don't know, nudity or some shit, it would be fine. Like I can have a criminal record and be a bookseller. It makes no difference.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
remember
we're not
did your parents ever tell you like you might run for office someday?
No.
My parents did.
No.
Like, what if you
No.
want to be a lawyer or a teacher and then they find out you have a criminal record? And now I'm like, I don't care.
No, you're doing exactly what you want to do. No need to
No backup plans.
no need to get involved in the politics. Somebody else can handle that.
Yeah.
Now, before we wanted to ask a little bit about you guys as authors. I wanted to ask like one more question relating to the bookstore, but I think it doesn't exactly relate, but I think it is a good general question to ask. But like, what in your opinion makes a good community?
Oh fuck, that's a good question.
What
What makes a good community?
We're just so jaded that we don't have conversations about hopeful things like that anymore. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I
Oh,
think
Lord.
the number one thing I think you need in a community is authenticity and organic growth.
And once
So
you can fake that, you've got
Yeah.
it made.
Fake it till you
No,
make it.
That's George Burns. That's not me.
like if you build it, they will come. I haven't seen that really work with arts and culture. I've seen arts and culture happen when like minds find one another and then they decide they want to do something and then they make the resources happen. So like if you build a community center for teens, like the real party's in the parking lot. It's not inside the
Yeah.
community center. So, we own a bookstore, which is our day job. And then we have our creative lives, which happen in and out of that. Like
Mhm.
it's all sort of one big mishmash right now. But I mean, the bookstore does allow us to help other members of our community. But I think And
and allows, like it's
we're outward about our purposes there. Like we tell people that we're a community minded bookstore, but I don't know. I feel like good community has to come from people, and people who have a genuine interest in what they're doing, and then find other people like them. What are you laughing at?
no, I'm just thinking about the question.
Oh,
It's a tough one.
I thought you were
It's a
going to
tough
talk about
question.
the grunge documentary you watched.
Oh yeah. So the other night I watched. I'd always wanted to watch It's Hype. It's on Amazon Prime. It's sort of the documentary of the Seattle music scene in the the 80s and 90s. And the thing I liked about it, I don't know, have you seen it?
No,
I know.
you're telling me about it now, and now I want to watch it. That
It's
sounds
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
It's great. The thing I took from it that was the best was that they're interviewing, like, I don't know, the guitarist for Soundgarden or someone from a band that didn't make it, and essentially they're saying, like, we didn't have anywhere else to play. Like there was only two clubs, and everybody just wanted to be in a band and play music, and we were doing this for 10 years before anybody paid any attention. And in
Mhm.
that time, we just got to get away with everything and just entertain ourselves and form relationships, and little indie record producers and radio stations and scenes. And they were talking about how they missed the freedom of just being able to do it essentially for themselves and get better or worse or not give a shit or give a
Mhm.
shit, just totally in absolute isolation. And I related to that living in London, Ontario. And I think that sort of that's the community spirit that pleases me the best, when I just feel like I'm in the shop or I'm at someone else's event, and we it just feels like you're in town doing stuff with your friends for other people in town, and nobody's watching, nobody cares, and there's a real freedom in that to and maybe somebody does care, maybe somebody will care, but like, maybe you have aspirations to have a career in this, but for me, when I feel that community spirit, and what that means to me is just when, like, I'm at, like, one of your shows and we're shooting the shit afterwards, and I like what you're doing, and I'm not thinking about anything else except your show, and that's nice. That's a nice place to be.
Yeah, like high concept discussions about like how to make London a better place.
Mhm.
Um, I have honestly been having and listening to those conversations for 25 years. And what I've come to is that I love London for what it is, which is predictably and reliably mediocre. Jason calls it like a Christopher Guest movie.
Yeah.
It will,
The joke's on us for living here.
yeah, yeah. If London's could get 100% at something, it will get 80. If we're shooting for gold, we will get bronze, or just fourth. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
just miss the
Just
podium.
off the podium.
Participation ribbon.
And to me, that's what's safe and lovely about the city. It's like that cousin that always gets drunk at the wedding, and there's going to be someone in the family who's like, we need to have an intervention and send him to rehab and like help him get a job. And meanwhile, like, Uncle Bobby is like totally fine living in the trailer and like being shit-faced on Bud. Like, he's fine. And you can just love Uncle Bobby the way he is. If he wants help, we'll give him help.
Mhm.
But London's like Uncle Bobby, so just like let Uncle Bobby
Yeah.
be.
It's so personal.
But
I'm so familial with
people
Vanessa.
talk about these big community activities, and I really think the best way to build the arts community is to make better art.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We could have a whole bunch of really shitty local regional artists, or we could have just a great arts community of people who love it, what they're doing, and are trying to be the best they can be. And when you find like-minded people, that's when the magic happens. You can't force it.
Yeah, you definitely can't build something like that on purpose.
Not on purpose. You can't be like, we're going to make an arts collective.
Yeah.
that is just going to turn into a bunch of drama
Yeah.
and wasted time and energy. You should just be like, what kind of art do I want to make? What kind of book do I want to write? What kind of song do I want to write?
Yeah, the success that we've had is just like working with people that we like, and you work on a project, and you have fun doing it, and then it's done, it's over, you know. And if you want to work on something else with them, you work on something else with them. But yeah, there's a freedom that I like about it, about not being anywhere important,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
If it becomes, there's another great moment in the documentary where you know, the guy's talking about, you know, what was the result of this sort of international attention on our shitty little town, and the camera pans over to like 10 enormous skyscrapers and condominiums, and he's like, that was not here 10 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, like that was built on the back of a bunch of, you know, scuzzy losers playing music in their basements and at each other's clubs. And, you know, I think, you know, things can be successful, but like London, I just can't.
I mean, you should try to make your world a better place.
Yeah.
You know, like we fully support like social activism and
you do that because you're stuck here in this town that has a lot of issues, and you don't just want to sit on, you don't just want to live in a city where all this shit happens. So you make good things happen because that's, you're deeply unsatisfied with a lot of things. But
well, and when it comes to politics, like we might not be as able to get as many people out to a Black Lives Matter protest, although London's was fucking huge. But you know, I completely understand seeing these incredible protests in like huge cities with like millions of people at them and thinking, I live in like one of the most historically racist cities in the country. We need to have one of these protests, no matter how it turns out, even if it turns out to be like a sad little rinky-dink protest, we need to have it. So like we completely, not that Black Lives Matter was.
Yeah.
it was amazing.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
so was the Greta Thunberg with the student walkout. What
Yeah, that was
was
great.
that called?
Yeah.
The
Was it called
climate
Earth?
strike.
Yeah, the
climate
climate
strike?
strike. That was
Yeah.
amazing. And we see them go by our store and we're
Right
just
by the
like,
shop.
holy shit. You know, and Pride is bigger and bigger every year. So like I do support making the world a better place, just to be clear.
Yeah.
I just think that like
You don't support making it worse?
no, it's just I've abided by so many 2 a.m. drunken conversations where people are like, how can we get the art scene in London to be like galvanized and, you know, really come up with something unique and different? It's like, then go home and make something unique and different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go make something you care about.
Yeah, you need to kind of and I think a lot of times London respects people that are able to like move beyond it in a way. Like you got out, you know, you were able to like, I don't know,
You
do
made
something.
it somewhere
Yeah,
else.
you made it somewhere else. I think a lot of what you know, there is a lot of good in the city, and like as you guys have found yourselves here, I'm sure like there's great community here and everything. But yeah, like to get you know, to get that big sort of, especially in the like kind of music community or the art scene, you need to have sort of that almost a like an example of success already having existed here or something, you know, like we don't have an Arkells in this city. They're from Hamilton, you know, so like Hamilton's like now they can rally around like we've got like Canada's go-to, you know, bar rock bands now, you know, like no problem, everything like that. Like London is now building up like their music community, like by building like better venues and things like that.
But when you see something like the Music Office, don't you think like, whatever?
No,
like,
I get excited by that. Absolutely, I get
I
excited.
don't know anything about it, honestly.
oh, like how London, the city hall, like appointed someone to be in charge of London's music scene.
He's
You didn't
gotten
hear
a lot
about
of
that?
really,
Yeah, I
he's
heard
gotten a lot
about
of
it, but-
really big acts in the city, like a lot
Good.
of.
I don't know anything about
Yeah, I
it.
was
I'm
gonna
just
say,
saying.
I know there's a lot of back and forth with the music office because you see half of it being like, why are we using this money to pay people to be in charge of the music scene when we could just give that money to the artists themselves and say, okay, use it, and then make the music and make the art. While some people see it as, oh, okay, this guy is actually like trying to promote it in the city, got the Junos to come in, that kind of stuff. So I don't know. There is the two sides to the music office, I
Junos
have
was a
heard.
big deal. That's a
Yeah.
big deal. That helped out
Yeah.
a lot of people.
Yeah, it was certainly like an actual thing. Whereas most of the big events that London gets aren't actually big events. They're events you didn't know existed until they were in London.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know they had a Canadian Country Music Awards. I thought that was just a category at the Junos.
Oh yeah.
It's a
I
huge
forgot
deal,
when
like,
that happened. It didn't even like, it wasn't that big of a deal when it even came through. People didn't notice it that much.
Yeah, but
I
the
think to
Junos
the
was
country
big.
people, though, to the country and Western
Oh,
people,
yeah.
it's
Oh yeah.
like,
It was a big deal for the country
Heaven.
Western people, and also we had like what is it? Isn't it Tessa Virtue? The figure skaters.
She's from Ilderton.
Yeah.
Oh, wasn't one of them? Who's from London? I thought
Scott
they were.
Moyer?
Is Scott Moyer from London?
No,
Or
they're
are they
both
both
from
from
Ilderton.
Okay, well I don't know anything in it.
Well, Ilderton's just outside of London.
Yeah.
There you go. So maybe that's it. We're all like, ah, you're basically here. Like
Well,
Rachel
that's their big.
like Rachel McAdams. We're like, ah, you're from London.
Where like Justin Bieber was born in London.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
take that one a little bit, or we just, no one actually wants to admit up to that. It's like, nope,
Yeah, I don't
he's
even like to
Stratford's
think
problem.
about that. I don't even like
Yeah.
to think about that. Those questions, those philosophical questions of
Questions.
regional identity when it comes to those folks.
Well, I think my reaction just comes from like the expectation of the 80% that I was mentioning before. And like sometimes they make a really good move. Like when Savannah Sewell was chosen to run Dundas Place, I was like,
Totally.
Yes.
oh my
That's
God,
fair.
this actually might work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you expect it to be like a shit show. Like they're going to hire like the wrong person.
Yeah, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, you have to keep in like the context is that we've had how many decades of, you know, crap work and
Yeah.
crap experiences. So we tend to be a little bit, you know, jaded and
A little more
pessimistic when it
cynical.
comes to this, and it's earned. It's not posturing. It's a number of broken-hearted years.
It came to a
So-
head really during a poetry reading at the Alex P. Keaton.
Oh, I don't think I was there. Oh,
About
yeah.
15 years ago.
Yeah, I was there.
Because we've obviously been to like a ton of poetry readings. We've both hosted them, read at them.
Yeah.
Jason's hosted many and read at many, much to his embarrassment. And not the good ones, not like the Heslop ones, or not like the Andy Verboom ones. I don't
Not
mean like
recently.
current poetry legend. I'm talking about like
Only
back in the day,
only our
embarrassing.
recent efforts are good.
Yeah,
right?
no, well, like embarrassing coffee shop days of like the 90s.
I think that's important, though. I mean,
Slam poetry and
I think if I may offer a different perspective here, you mentioned the Bad Art Festival earlier. I really do believe in that very strongly.
yeah.
I believe that we, and you know, and this might speak to the, you know, attitude about London, Ontario that we were talking about earlier too. Like, I think there needs to be a freedom to make terrible art. There's a liberation that comes from not trying to be perfect or not trying to, you know, aspire to, you know, maybe what another city does or what artists elsewhere do. Accepting that, you know, something's only great for the last 10% of it. It's 90% of it is shit, you know, when you're making it, you know,
Yeah.
and celebrating that 90% and just getting together with other people and intentionally only putting in like 10%, you know.
Yeah.
And there's such a freedom with that because there is an extraordinary pressure to give it your all and you know, be perfect and be performative and, you know, have a persona in the community and have that not be challenged and maintain that and be judged for how well or poorly you maintain that. There's to me there's a subversive liberation in intentionally and celebratorily being terrible and, you know, laughing at it and just saying, here's a shitty song that I wrote, but I love it. I wrote it when I
Yeah.
was 16, but I love it. It's terrible.
Well,
So I'm going to
sometimes
play it for you.
like the best art can come out of that too, though.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like who did the toilet, the Dada toilet?
Duchamp.
Duchamp. Yeah. And when he was like, when he did, like, he didn't, there was no effort. Like, he didn't handcraft the toilet. He literally just pointed at a toilet and said, "That's art now."
Well, it does come back around.
Like, that's
we were
funny.
At the,
Like, it's very funny.
we were at the Fuse Bad Art 3, and what was his name? He got up and did this like really psychosexual dance to Phil Collins' Coming in the Air
Oh
Tonight.
yeah.
And it was just hypnotic and
That's like-
gorgeous. And it was awful. But like there's something like it was the best act of the night.
Or like the guy with the shit book where it's just the word shit repeated.
Oh yeah, that's Mike Batista, isn't it?
Yeah, that was brilliant. I was
Yeah.
like, this is a brilliant art object. And
very
he just
funny.
did it to be funny.
Yeah.
Oh no, wasn't that the word fart?
Yeah, it was fart. Yeah,
Fart,
It was just
yeah.
for shits and giggles. But beautifully bound, you know, like with a
Oh.
proper cover, and then I think probably even I would love it if you like registered an ISBN for it and everything. Like it's cataloged in the Library of Canada.
I
But,
think it is.
And I like that. I
Like punk, like the entire punk movement is people just getting together and doing whatever. So I mean, it's not necessarily like what is bad art. I think is like I think we'd all say like anything insincere is bad art.
I would say that it has to reach for the stars and then completely fail.
Oh.
Like it's only as successful as
Oh,
it
like-
is unsuccessful.
Like your definition of like the bad art that we celebrate.
Yeah, the bad
Yeah,
art that we
yeah,
celebrate.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Like you really have to. It has to be like a poem you wrote, perhaps in all sincerity, where you're just like bringing out everything, like every poetic piece of talent you thought you had at the time, and then fail absolutely.
You're like, this is gonna get me laid so
This
much.
is gonna win. This is gonna win a prize. Yeah.
All right. Well, going off bad art, we're going to talk a little bit about good art. So you both are authors and have written multiple books between you both, many regarding London and local history. Why have you found that topic so interesting, especially since you've been saying that London is very mediocre? You
That's
seem to be
why.
writing, yeah.
That's
That's
why. No, for me, that's why. Okay, because all like the big famous stuff is written about. Like,
Yeah.
I don't need to write about
Yeah.
like famous leaders or musicians or whatever. If there's something like that's obviously good and important, someone has documented that already. And they probably did a really good job. It's like when people take pictures of Notre Dame when they're in Paris. I'm like, guys, there are thousands of professional photographers who have taken pictures of
Yeah.
Notre Dame. Yours is not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be in it. Like, do a selfie in front of Notre Dame or get someone to take a photo of you going like in front of Notre Dame. That's, to me, that's cool. Like, so it's the same thing with London's local history. It's all someone standing in front of Notre Dame going like that's what I think I want to write about, because no one else has written about it. And the minutia of everyday lives, that's where
Yeah.
the weight of beauty and like those little tiny gorgeous moments, they happen and no one notices except the person who's in it, and then they die and that moment's gone.
Mm.
It's such a quintessential North American city, and the stories of the big centers are fascinating, and they are important because generally more interesting things happen in them. But a life in London, Ontario is representative of an enormous number of people and their identities. So
And they're
like Burlington, Windsor, like
Sudbury.
Milwaukee, like
Milwaukee.
most people probably live in those kinds of places. So, and that, second placedness is fairly undocumented. It's because, again, folks shoot for the stars, and that whole middle ground is like the language isn't necessarily there for it.
Well, yeah, quaint small towns are documented too, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
Stars Hollow.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
know?
or Twin Peaks.
Yeah, Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Or like, what's the one in It's a Wonderful Life?
I do
One Tree Hill. That's one. There you go. Boom.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. They're all documented for their adorableness, but like most people in the world live in like a mid-sized nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. They've been moved there.
And
One way or
when
another.
I say that, it's not in a derogatory way. It is with 100% fondness. Like when I saw like Good City's new shirt that says "My hometown
I hope it
sucks,"
sucks. Yeah.
I want that,
Yeah.
and not because I want to change London at all, because I revel in its suckage. Like, that's what makes me want to live here. I don't want to move to a place where I'm competing. There's always going to be someone better than you and bigger than you. There's always the party story.
Yeah. So like, yeah, I get and got sick of going to cities, larger cities, where I was with my friends who lived in that city and moved from London to that city. And, I liked hanging out with my friends, but I got really sick of like them constantly being on their phones looking for a better party to go to. I'm
Yeah.
like, just fucking stay somewhere. Like, can you just
Yeah, let's just chill.
let's just relax. Because in London, whatever party you're at, that's it. That's as good
Yeah.
as
Only
it's
party.
and you
It's
either
the only
make that party as fucking great as it can be, because there's nothing else. And
Yeah.
I really feel that way about sort of the London identity, that and it like how many people are writing about, well, I don't know, actually I can't answer that
Well, there's a
question.
ton of books about London local history, but they, Jason went on this crazy, I shouldn't say crazy because it was towards a book he was writing, or is writing, but he went through this binge of like 6 months of reading nothing but local histories about all sorts of little places, all across Canada. And he found some really interesting commonalities, like no matter if it was written about Hamilton or Calgary or whatever, they were all sort of the same. Kintor or
Ballymote.
Clan de Boy.
There's various, there are a lot of similarities where they're trying to take what might to them seem like an inconsequential history and sort of make it big so that it can compete in the larger sort of narrative of world history, like the great tides of history, predetermination and what have you. So it's almost a little literary genre, Ontario local history, where like the first chapter is always on the Ice Age. Like they need to be big. They need to go big, right? So it starts like 25 million years ago. The hamlet of Ballymote was beneath 60 miles of ice, and like I'm just like, guys, just settle down.
Like that the
relax.
hands of God came in and parted the ice for the people of Ballymote.
There's always a chapter just called like fire ! Where it just lists all the buildings that burned down.
Oh, and the cursory like paragraph mention of the indigenous people that lived there.
Yeah, there's always a terribly written chapter by some perhaps not well-meaning historian talking about the indigenous history of the area, and that's always chapter 2. It comes right after the glaciers, and then you skip ahead 400 years, and then
there's white people finally,
and then somebody opens up a tavern. That's when our story begins. That's when our story really begins.
Yeah,
that's what the book's
all the good stories start.
Yeah.
We wrote the London 150 book. And Jason's had this idea for a cultural history of London, Ontario for years. He's been planning this book. So we pitched it to Dan Wells at Biblioasis, and it was like just before Canada 150. And there was all this extra funding for publishers and artists to like make Canada 150 stuff. So we pitched this book not at all to do with 150. It was just a cultural history of London, Ontario.
It was 100 moments when we pitched it.
Oh yeah, it was 100 moments. Yeah. So then he goes,
and that was supposed to be a joke too, right? Like that one would write a book like that about London, Ontario.
Yeah.
100 greatest moments in London cultural
in
history.
London.
Yeah. And then we were gonna like, if you look at the London 150 book, like it starts with the first entry is Canada fails to become the capital of Upper Canada. That's literally the title of the first entry. So we were doing it tongue in cheek. So then Dan turns to us and he's like, okay, so you want to do 100 moments and you want to have it done in 2 years. He's like, okay, could you do 150 moments and have it done in 9 months?
Wow.
You know, like, fuck.
We were like, sure,
Yeah,
because we're like,
Totally.
no, right? Like,
yeah, we would love a book contract. But I think it was like a month before the book came out that I realized that the whole concept of Canada 150 was like super duper racist and horrible.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, like we just wrote, like, no wonder, like, you know, like no wonder like Chippewa Reservation wasn't getting back to us about participating in this book. Like, it's racist.
Yeah.
So embarrassing. But the book itself is really good. I'm proud of that book.
yeah, I like the book. I think, I think,
I would just change the title.
yeah, well, I mean, yeah. It's it's how it got published. It's an unfortunate uh, connection, but there's a lot of good stuff in that book. And again, we got a chance to sort of explore that idea of second placedness and mediocrity, and celebrating the little cultural things that we think sort of make up what's cool about living in this town.
Totally.
What would you say was your was the most interesting bit of information you found about the city while writing this book that you think the listeners should know about?
So many, but I shouldn't say.
I mean, we have a copy. Do you want me to grab it?
No, we should be able to come up. Like, I've forgotten half of what I remembered for that book, right?
I
Like,
mean, one of the things that is really embarrassing for me is that we didn't include that, like, one of the, I think it was like 3 guys in the canoe, they with, like, there was like John Simcoe and like 2 other guys.
Mhm.
And there's the guy who wrote the diary. Is it Little? Is that his last name?
I'd have to read
Anyway,
our book.
there's the guy who wrote the diary that documented Simcoe founding London, right?
Okay, yeah.
Wasn't that his wife? Didn't his wife write the diary?
No, she wrote a
Oh,
diary.
okay.
But this is the
So
guy
there
who
was
was
a
like in the canoe.
Right.
Okay. And then there's Simcoe. And then there was the 3rd guy who never gets mentioned. And I didn't find out until afterwards, was a person of color. He's actually a Black man who was a free Black man on the expedition. So like London is co-founded by a Black man and it's not in our book. That annoys
That's
me.
a very interesting bit of information, though.
There's a lot
Yeah.
that isn't in
That's
our
really
book,
cool.
though.
Yeah.
'Cause, like, the what people love doing is like they'll come up to us and be like, "Why didn't you include this?"
You're like, I'm sorry.
I'm just
All
like,
day
"Fuck, man, it's
long,
just
that must
a
be.
project." Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe
Just a
in the
book.
last 2 decades you've known me and that I had an avid interest in local history, and maybe like during the year and a half you knew I was writing this book,
Yeah.
that would have been the time to mention, are you
Yeah.
doing this?
Yeah, we still, because you never stop thinking about it, you never stop researching it, and so yeah, we've found out all sorts of things.
My favorite tidbit from that book that comes up repeatedly for me, because I keep seeing it incorrect, like the incorrect information everywhere, like I just read it in a book,
Right.
is why London's called the Forest City, which Jason actually uncovered the first mention of London as the Forest City.
Possibly. I think it's likely the first mention.
And he documented that in the book.
Mhm.
So that was really cool. And it's actually, that's a fascinating story.
Do you want to hear
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. I was gonna say, are you gonna tell us or leave us hanging?
So it was London was clear cut, of course, like most frontier towns, and it was by the 1850s this like shadeless nightmare downtown, where Victoria Park is. There was like no trees. There was like cows wandering everywhere. It was just like an agricultural frontier town, like something like Back to the Future 3 or something like that.
Yeah, like if you
people
look at
spitting and
like
spittoons and
the art from that time, it'll be like, or even early photographs, it's literally like flat. There's no trees, and then there'll be this big Gothic building in the middle of like a flat nothing, because they clear cut it.
So one of the aldermen at the time, who was also a photographer, one of London's first photographers, convinced City Council, Lord only knows how he did it, but convinced City Council to buy like 10,000 trees from Dorchester and have them shipped into London. And they planted them all downtown. Okay. And like reforested the city. It took like 25 years, but they did it. And there was a, like maybe cut to like 30 years later, these trees have grown a bit. And shade has returned to the city, and there's a convention of, what was it? It was
Entomological.
yes, like I think like a insect club.
They were
Like,
bug fans.
yeah, there was a lot of sort of like naturalist clubs happening in town.
Wasn't it the first entomological academic conference in Canada, though?
Perhaps I think they started the first journal,
Oh,
North American
what it
journal
was.
dedicated to insects.
Bugs.
Anyway,
Ooh,
all these
right here
bug
in
nerds
London.
came up, and to have this conference, like the annual, North American Entomological Society comes, and they were just so overwhelmed by how beautiful it was and how many trees there were, that when they went back in their conference minutes, London's referred to as the Forest City. They sort of nicknamed it the Forest City, being naturalists and of that ilk. And that, I think, is the first recorded mention of it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And it was in passing too, like, we loved this city,
Yeah.
we loved this forest
Forest.
city, like, so they sort of made it up.
By bug nerds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who would have thought?
I wanted to ask a little bit about we've gone over your like a bit about the history of your authorship here, but you've also take part in the city. We were mentioning it earlier in the show. You took part in the memorial walk for Jackie English, who was murdered in 1969. And Vanessa, you speak about it in your book, The Forest City Killer. Why do you think it's important to continue the conversation of the murders that happened in the city?
The basic premise is you can't murder children and get away with it. It's not Jack the Ripper. It's not an unsolvable 150-year-old crime. Being booksellers, we get a laugh often when people come in and they're like, "Oh, this book is really old. It's like 100 years old," and we're like, "That's not old." Like, that's not old at all. Like, someone brought in like a fabric bag filled with 100-year-old books today. Like, it's not, and they're worth like $10 a pop.
Oh.
So to me, 50 years is not a long time at all. And I think as people get older, they realize that 50 years is not a long time. And people say, "Oh, it was so long ago, the perpetrator's probably dead by now." But when I dug into the research, I discovered that no, he's not dead. He's alive and living his life and has gotten away with murder. In fact, 2 people have gotten away with murder, and I know where they live and I know who they are. And please come for me. I would love it. So, if you're okay with a child murderer living next door to you, just because they're old, they can, all right, fine. I'm not okay with that. And I'm also not okay with like trying to pretend that London is this like fuzzy wuzzy had a bear place.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't agree with pretending things are one way when they weren't. Like, we're not Kitchener. Like, stop trying. Like, no, it's great. We should have bike paths. I'm sorry, Shelley, if she's listening. I love you to death. I love you to death.
We like and use the bike path.
We like and use the bike paths, but like we love the Thames Valley Parkway. We use it. I use it constantly. I was on it this morning. So no, it's not that I don't like. Just because there are bad things doesn't mean we shouldn't have nice things. That's not what I mean.
Yeah, but the desire for a certain like level of livelihood,
yeah,
can't like negate the actual terrible things that are happening.
Yeah, like we can't. Why should we pretend that London didn't have this weird anomalous? First of all, it's not a like when it comes to a reputation thing, because I know Jackie English's sister, and I'm close to family members of several of the victims. So I'm not trying to speak about it in a cold-hearted way, because you should never exploit victim stories, okay? But looking at it from like I understand that there are certain parties in power in this city who have explicitly suppressed my book, Michael Arnfield's book, and the message about those books, and instructed other people to do the same, to brush it under the rug. which first of all disgusts me because they don't want justice for literally dead children, which is horrible. To them, the appearance of the city and like getting the new Dr. Utker factory here is more important than catching a serial killer. And that just makes no sense in my mind. And I'm sure that they have a moral justification for it, like like a utilitarian philosophy about like the best for the most. And okay, but you can have both. Like if you've ever been to like New Orleans or Chicago or New York, there are like serial killer tours and crime tours and mob tours and like, and I'm not saying that we should exploit the victims of serial murder, but I'm just saying that like being the serial killer capital of Canada doesn't have to be like a bad marketing thing. It's
Yeah.
like no one thinks it's a serial killer capital now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's 50 years
Yeah.
ago. So like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there are so many
Yeah.
people who would love to like get into the mystery, especially because they're unsolved. So it's like, ooh, who do you think did it? And
Yeah.
you can even make it marketable if that's your main concern, is making your city marketable. But like this is an actual, I just don't understand why. It makes me really angry. Like I've asked for
Yeah.
meetings with and I've had really successful meetings with certain law enforcement agencies who are super cooperative and helpful, but specifically there are certain, I'm not going to say, that would be a really bad idea, but there are some specific law enforcement agencies and political bodies that are not interested in addressing this. Even things like bringing back rewards or starting a task force or even like some sort of public acknowledgement
Mm-hmm.
or apology to the victims' families for not having this addressed. You know, and I know victims' family members who have approached those same people themselves, not just me, but like my sibling was murdered or my child was murdered, and they don't get a response either. So, you know, it's a blaring injustice and a black mark on the history of our city. And the black mark isn't like the serial killings are a black mark. Okay. That's a
Yeah.
very dark, horrible time. But what compounds it and is an embarrassing affront is the lack of acknowledgement and the lack of dealing with that. So much so that like I was an obsessive local history nerd since I was in high school. Like I could tell you a whole epic story about like how I became obsessed with local history. And I spent hours in the London room, like when Glenn Kerna was there, when Arthur McClellan was there, like just like learning how to use the archives, going up to Western's Weldon archives and digging through like newspaper clippings. And like I have spent hours interviewing hundreds of people, especially older people, like over the age of 60, who are newspaper reporters and like retired detectives and community members. And like I've talked to so many people. And how did I get through all those years of being a local history nerd and I didn't find out about these murders?
Yeah.
It's because people just don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, it was nowhere.
It was nowhere.
Yeah.
And when I found out, I was like, holy Hannah, like, what is this?
Yeah, it's crazy to me because the first time I even heard about us being like the serial killer capital of Canada was when I saw your guys hosting the walk or help promoting the memorial walk, and I was like, oh, like what is this memorial walk? Who, like, what happened? Then doing the research, it's like, oh man, how have I been living here for 25 years and had no idea that any of this even happened?
Yeah, like we've been talking about sending our kids back to school during COVID, which has been a whole discussion on its own. But like when we found out what the statistical chances of our children being in contact with COVID were, I said to Jason, well, it's a hell of a lot better than being a kid here in the 1960s. Because I figured out that 1 in 2,000 children were murdered by a serial killer in London in 1968 and 69. 1 in 2,000.
That's insane.
That's
Very
insane.
depressing. Yeah.
There's a 1 in 2,000 chance that your child's going to be randomly picked up by a serial sex predator.
Yeah.
Live here.
Come join us.
The first time that I really realized that we had anything like this, I think, was when your book came out. When I saw the title, it's like Forest City Killer. What are you talking about? You know, like it's just not something that's talked about or really shown, or really people are educated on at all in this city, I think. So like you're doing a very good service, you could say, not only just probably to your mental health because it's something you're assessing over, but but also just like, for the citizens of this community as well.
Well, Mike Arnfield, I should give credit to. He was the one who first brought it to light, and was the one who noticed and he wasn't the first one to notice, but he was the one who first made public the statistical anomaly in London. And one of the things he's pointed out many times is if the same number of serial killers were in 1968, you take the population of London. Oh, I did it again. I'm so sorry. I'm using my hands to talk. You take the population of London and then build a ratio with New York City, you would have had 80 or 90 serial killers operating at the same time in New York City.
That's
Oh my
crazy.
gosh, yeah.
Jesus.
Oh,
That's insane to think about. 80 or 90 active serial killers.
Yeah,
Oh
like
my God.
one Son of Sam
Yeah.
sent the entire city in a spiral.
Well, you also had a recent book that came out. It was this past year. Michael Binder Raw, correct?
Yeah. It was it last year?
Yeah.
Wow, 2019. It was it was an exhibition catalog for the first retrospective exhibition of Michael Bidner's artwork, and he was an artist from London, Ontario, on the bleeding edge of Xerox art, zines, essentially like DIY paper culture. That sort of when I was in my 20s, totally was essentially born into and given by guys like him, and nobody and he was one of the best in Canada, in my opinion, if not the best in Canada for that kind of thing. He died in the 1980s and essentially just entirely vanished from the Canadian art narrative, if they even gave him much time to begin with. Nobody really understood what he was doing, and well, some people did. Obviously, he had some really important supporters, but he vanished and was disappeared. And this was an effort on my part in the Macintosh Gallery to reestablish him and his importance in Canadian art, because he's a deeply important artist, I think. So yeah, that was the book, was the catalog, which included essentially, I think, the first biography of him and the first sort of extensive catalog of his work, and unfortunately a cursory for the space we had, but nevertheless, I think still essential sort of discussion about why he's important and why he shouldn't be forgotten,
And why he was forgotten too.
why he was forgotten. Yeah.
I actually also, somebody who I didn't really know about at all until seeing your book. My partner Jill has a copy. It has not left our coffee table. I think since she purchased it. So I have seen it many a times.
It's like amazing, isn't it?
The art is really crazy. Yeah, the art is really crazy.
We wave it under the noses of young readers. Fuck, I hate that phrase, but young people, and it appears as though that his work, which was made in the late 1970s, was made yesterday. Like the guy was just totally not a prophet. I don't like that, but he totally saw what was coming and found use for tools that only really became common and acceptable in the art world maybe 25 years after he started, certainly after his death. So yeah, his work just looks like it was made yesterday. There's something really special about that. It's great stuff.
Well, when we think of the arts community as like a haven for the gay community, and it's a really interesting perspective to see, like, just the straight up homophobia that led to so much of his exclusion.
Yeah, absolutely. I was definitely part of it. He died from complications due to AIDS, and that was sort of the final nail in the coffin as far as the Canadian art world was concerned, certainly the local art world. And
just too much scandal, right?
Yeah, and as he came into his own and started experimenting and being more explicit with his sexuality, in his artwork, that made it even more difficult for him to, have his colleagues in town feel comfortable around the sort of things that he was doing. Never mind that what he was doing was 10 times as interesting and probably, 50 times as relevant. He is easily one of the best artists from London, in my opinion. But yeah, he just sort of vanished for those reasons, among others. But that one was a big part of it, I think.
There's just like the exhibition has so many dicks in it. Like my parents knew like Jason was doing this big art exhibition at the Macintosh at Western, and they like wanted to come. And I was like, you were very welcome to come.
Yeah.
But I just want you to know that there are a lot of dicks.
It's
a lot of
There's
dicks.
just a lot of dicks.
There's a big dick right when you walk in, right at the top of the stairs of the Macintosh gallery, right there.
Like a good looking dick.
It's
like
gorgeous painting.
Just staring you in the eyes.
It's looking at you, you're looking at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, but God bless them. They've been supportive.
Macintosh?
No.
Oh, my parents. Yeah.
They, like, despite how uncomfortable they may have felt, and I can't speak for them. I don't know whether they were or not, but if they were, they didn't say anything.
No, they're awesome.
Yeah.
We do a lot of stuff I think that horrifies them, and they just let us. So that's nice.
Yeah.
They don't give us a hard time.
No.
So, guys, is there anything that you want our listeners to know about Brown and Dickson before we move on to just like some more like we got a couple game type questions to close out the episode.
Okay. Shit. Well, I don't know.
We got new
what do people
shelves.
care to know? Yeah, we do. We have new shelves in the shop.
We're
very
reopening
excited about these.
Yeah, we're reopening the store soon.
Yeah.
And we're doing free local delivery for $25 or up.
Yeah.
Or unlimited free delivery for our Patreon members. So you can join our Patreon. And there's some really low tiers. So if you like just want to support a local indie bookstore and
for the cost of a cup of coffee.
For the cost of a cup of coffee, we appreciate your support. Canadian writers don't make a lot of money, and used booksellers don't make a lot of money. So we appreciate the support to continue doing what we're doing.
Yeah, but there's good deals on the Patreon. It's not just like
we made it worthwhile.
Charitable support.
Yeah.
We give back as much as are given one way or another.
Yeah, last month our Patreon members got a free T-shirt printed by Antler River Press, and they got a free download of Whoopsue's album, which is awesome. And
very nice.
This coming month they're going to be getting
Generous Sands zines.
Yeah, Generous Sands zines, and I think
JR's zines.
JR's
I recently heard it referred to.
And so I think a free download of Jenny Burkle's album, I think
so.
This month. And then in our notebooks, we've got some locally printed, amazing
locally
notebooks.
Sourced notebooks.
Well, I wouldn't call them locally sourced.
No,
they're not like,
I don't know.
We didn't make them from trees that grow in the Thames or anything.
No.
But they have the books logo on them. We think they're pretty cool. So yeah. Well, free swag for patrons.
And mad credit, all sorts of book credit to the Patreon customers.
Yeah, you get back every cent you put into the Patreon, and then another 50% on top of it in book credit. So it's like,
oh wow,
doesn't actually, if you buy books, it's actually like a 50% off coupon. Yeah.
I was gonna say I don't see any downfall in joining this Patreon. I get gifts, I get things that are cheaper. It's all you need.
Yeah.
That's all you need. Yeah, totally. You get mad merch. Great merch. We kiss each parcel before we send it out.
We do.
And then off it goes.
Well, after the ceremony.
Yeah.
Like a cult ceremony that precedes every delivery. Yeah. But only patrons get to attend those, of course. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So everybody needs to sign up, become a patron right now.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe we should start a Patreon for what we're about to do so that people can take part in this. So we're going to do a quick game. Erin, why don't you intro this?
Yes. So we do this game every week. So if you guys have been listening, you would know it's this or that.
Okay. Excellent.
So we just have a few things in London that are kind of similar, and quick fire, as without thinking, no explanation needed. Just tell us which one you'd prefer.
You go first, Jason.
Should we both answer at the same time and see whether we're
No one will
the
be able to
same?
hear us if we talk
Oh,
over each
okay.
other.
That could be funny and okay. What would you guys like us to do? Go back and forth?
You know what? Why don't you both answer at the same time,
Okay,
and
I
then
like that
and
too.
then notice how like different you
Different they
are,
are.
Yeah,
or
okay.
Or it's the
something like that.
same.
Yeah.
It'll be like the dating game.
Yeah.
Or like
Right.
the marriage game or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
All right. So
Right.
first one, Masonville Mall or White Oaks Mall?
White Oaks.
Masonville.
Really?
Oh, different.
There's
there
a-
you go.
Yeah. It's way better at Masonville.
I like that White Oaks isn't as good. I feel more comfortable there.
Well,
Masonville's too posh, man.
there's no plus size clothing store at White Oaks.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
Masonville does have the best selection. I like Masonville the best. All right. Next one: Beer Lab or Storm Stayed?
Beer Lab.
Yeah, I'll go with Beer Lab.
Nice.
Gotta love the boys in there at Beer Lab.
It's the giant can.
Yeah.
What are they
Big
called?
crowlers. The
Yeah.
crowlers.
Yeah.
Covent Garden Market or Western Fair Market?
Western Fair Market.
Yeah.
It's an easy one.
You guys are probably there all the time for that one.
Yeah.
Wortley Road or Dundas East?
Oh man.
Like we have
Neither?
yeah.
Do we have to choose?
No.
We had Dundas
Yes.
East. We have to
Yeah,
pick
I'll
Dundas
say
East.
Dundas East, yeah.
We have to pick Dundas East.
Yeah. Because the Mystic's there.
Well, and Bread and
The
Roses.
Mystic Bookshop,
so
Bread
like
and Roses.
two
yeah.
of our colleagues are there, so we'll support.
Whose
Dundas
shops
East.
we love.
And I feel like Wortley got like top 10 neighborhood in
They don't need our
Canada. Like
support.
they don't need our support at all.
Yeah.
You want to throw in then a different neighborhood? Just throw in a neighborhood that you really like. Then
Blackfriars.
Blackfriars. Yeah.
Blackfriars.
That's a beautiful neighborhood.
Blackfriars. The bomb.
beauty. Blackfriars. Okay. Last one.
Home County or Sunfest?
Home County.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Hands
Yeah.
Give
down.
me a break. Sunfest sucks. And I don't even care if they know I said that. It's horrible. It's overcrowded. The vendors are crap. Like everyone thinks it's this big special world music festival and they don't realize all those musicians on a circuit, they're on a circuit. There's other festivals just like it all over the place.
Are we grading this on the quality of the musicians or just the festival?
Just the festival overall.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Because there's good musicians at Sunfest.
Well, there
I've seen
are.
some great concerts at Sunfest, but I wish that they were playing somewhere else. I
Yeah.
could see them. But that's probably the only
Yeah.
place I could see them.
I like the food at Sunfest when it's like I really like that, like, I think they're Ecuadorian church ladies who make
Yeah.
pupusas. That's my favorite food
Yeah.
booth at any Victoria Park festival. But Home County.
Yeah, I felt magic at Home County that I haven't felt at Sunfest.
Some of the performances there too, right? Like, is there a specific headliner that you remember?
Oh, Joel Plaskett for sure.
Oh yeah.
Heck yeah.
They've had some crazy, amazing artists at Home County that I'm like, how is this happening in London?
Yeah.
Last year was
Raffi,
supposed
for
to be
God's sake.
Stephen Page. Didn't happen. It got rained out.
Well, I remember that. We were there for that. Oh, fuck. That was the year that we got totally rained out, remember?
Oh, that was
That was a nightmare.
That was the most-
Despite the fact of having our tent essentially self-destruct under a torrent of rain and us like madly boxing up our inventory, we still love Home County. Still love it. A nightmare. Peak of anxiety.
I
that has
blocked
been
that
unmatched.
out.
Yeah.
I blocked that out.
Yeah.
I
That's
was-
the night Stephen Page was supposed to play.
Yeah.
That was terrible.
You're almost
Yeah.
blaming him at this point. You're just like, if he had played, none of this would have happened.
I'm
His
so
power.
sorry, Aaron, but I've never been a fan of Stephen Page. So
Oh, no problem. I won't. I'm not taking offense to it.
Yeah. There's only 2 Bare Naked Ladies songs I like.
It's
They're
been.
big.
That's it.
No.
That's
Not that one.
We're
Funny enough, this game-
we're big Bare Naked Ladies people in our household. BNL because they're essential. You gotta shorten the name sometimes because
fair enough.
so
Fair
essential.
enough.
Hey, thank you guys for taking the time. We really appreciate it. Again, is there anything else that you wanted to throw out there to the listeners before we head off the air here?
I guess just stay safe and make art.
It's a great way to end it. Yeah.
Stay sexy
Like it.
and don't get murdered.
Yeah, stay sexy and don't get murdered.
Get my drink.
Hi, my name's Jason Dickson.
And I'm Vanessa Brown,
You're listening to
the London's Pretty Cool podcast.